Hi, welcome to Watch It Played. My name is Rodney Smith. In this video, we're going to learn the 2 to 4 player game Hero Realms, designed by Robert Dowdy and Darwin Castle, and published by White Wizard Games. In the fantasy setting of Hero Realms, you'll begin with a small, rather weak deck of cards that you'll add to over the course of the game, creating a powerful storehouse of items, actions, and champions that you'll use to defeat your opponents. This is based on the popular game Star Realms, which was also by the same publisher, but it does have some unique differences, and you don't need to have any prior knowledge of Star Realms in order to play this game because I'm going to walk you through everything you need to know. So join me at the table and let's learn how to play. The game is made up of a large deck of cards. To set up, from these we'll need to find the ones that make up each player's starting deck. Go through the deck face up, looking in the top left-hand corner and setting aside any that you see with a circular symbol there, like the ones we have here. These we'll use in just a moment. The ones without a symbol that we have remaining, we'll further separate into 5 different groups. You'll find a collection of fire gems, short swords, daggers, rubies, and gold, as titled at the top. The fire gems you can set aside for now. We'll use those in a moment. In this video, I'm going to set up a 2-player game. So from these stacks, you'll now give each player 1 short sword, 1 dagger, 1 ruby, and 7 gold, which they'll each shuffle into their own face-down personal deck. Any unused starting cards you can simply return to the box. The cards we set aside earlier with the circular symbols in the upper left-hand corner are going to form the market deck, which we should shuffle thoroughly and place face down between the players. Then deal 5 cards face up from here in a line to form the market. At the end of this, we'll place face up the deck of fire gems that we had separated out earlier when creating the starting deck piles. Each player begins with 50 health, which you can track with a pencil and pen, dice, or these double-sided health tracking cards that come with the game for each player. The face-up value showing on top is your current health, so to begin the game, we'd start like this. We'll learn how to adjust these as necessary during the game a little bit later. Determine a starting player randomly. They will now draw 3 cards from their personal deck into their hand. The other player will then draw 5 cards for their hand. Cards that you have in your hand are kept secret from the other players. And that's the setup. Hero Realms is a deck building game, and what that means is that each player will start with a deck, a small, rather weak one, that they will then build to be better over the course of the game. For example, acquiring new cards from the marketplace. And with these, they'll try to be the first player to reduce their opponent's health to 0. The game is played over a series of turns, starting with the first player and then going clockwise around the table. And on your turn, you'll complete 3 phases, starting with the main phase. Here you'll be able to take a number of actions, and we'll learn about each of them. And these you can take as often as you're able and want to. Let's learn the first action, playing a card from your hand. To do this, simply take a card from your hand and place it face up on the table in front of you. Playing cards allows you to do the other possible actions on your turn, like buying new cards, which we'll learn about now. Any cards that you play that show the gold symbol, like these, add gold to your gold pool based on their values. Right now, I would say that I have 3 gold in my gold pool. This pool is kind of like an imaginary bank of points that you have to spend from as you buy cards from the market, or to add to as you play other cards from your hand that provide you with gold over the course of the main phase. Gold is used to purchase cards either from the 5 face-up in the market or from the top of the fire gem deck. And I should point out, this deck is made up of 16 exact copies of the fire gem card. The cost to buy something is found in its upper right-hand corner. So looking at these options, I could afford either influence or profit from the market, or a fire gem. In fact, with 3 gold, I could actually afford some combination of these, like both influence and profit. However, purchases are always made one at a time. So let's say I decided to buy profit. When you buy a card, instead of placing it into your hand, it goes into a personal discard pile that you'll keep face up in front of you. You won't gain any of the abilities or effects of what you've just purchased. These will be used later, as we'll see. Also, the cost you paid is subtracted from your current pool. Profit cost me 1 gold, so I have 2 left. After buying a card from the market, you always replace it with a new one drawn from the top of the market deck. This is important because it may reveal a new card that you want to buy with your remaining gold. And yes, I think I'd prefer to get this Intimidation instead of the previously available Influence or Fire Gem. Keep in mind you don't have to spend all your gold, and you can stop or start buying again at any point during your turn. Instead of providing you with gold, some cards that you play will show this symbol, which adds to a separate combat pool for this turn. These combat points you may gain and then use all throughout your main phase in order to attack your opponent by subtracting from this pool any amount and reducing their health by that amount. This player has a combat pool of 2 currently, so they could do 1 damage to their opponent, but they would probably do the full 2, of course. To show this, the opponent would then rotate this card to 40, sliding it down to reveal the 8 underneath for 48. If you lose enough life over the course of the game, you flip this card over to get to some of the lower values. I should mention that as you spend points from either your gold or combat pools, the cards that provided you with those points, the ones that you played face up in front of you, those are not discarded. They'll remain in play. Also, you've probably seen there's other symbols and special abilities showing on the market cards that we haven't talked about yet, but those I'll come back to a little bit later. Once a player has played as many cards and performed as many actions as they want to or are able to, then it's time to move on to the discard phase. Here, players will first lose all of the remaining points within their gold and combat pools. So anything that you wish to spend, you need to do so before this discard phase. Now put any items or actions that you played during your turn into your discard pile. Under the title of each card, you'll find further words to describe it. It is here where you might find the words action, or as we see here, item. So again, it's actions and items that would get discarded now. Also discard any unplayed cards that might still remain in your hand. As I mentioned previously, anything in your discard pile is kept face up, and you or any other player may look through your discard pile at any time. We'll learn about champions a little later, but if you have any in play, they'll say champion here instead of item or action. Unlike items or actions, champions are not removed from play. And as we'll see later, sometimes they end up rotated sideways. At this point in the discard phase, turn all of them upright. Finally, we have the draw phase, where you will now draw 5 cards from your personal deck back into your hand. If at any point in the game you would need to draw a card from your personal deck and it was empty, for example on a future draw phase when I would need to draw 5 cards, and I only find 2 here. At that moment, when your deck runs out, and only at that moment, you'll collect your discard pile together, shuffle it thoroughly, and then create a new draw pile from it, and continue taking any cards that you were owed. In this way, the things that you bought from the market that initially went straight to the discard pile will eventually end up in your deck, and then be drawn into your hand to be played in future turns. After the discard phase, the next player in clockwise order goes, and around you go like this, or back and forth in a 2-player game, until eventually one player has 0 health, in which case the other player is the winner. And with that, you now understand the rules to Hero Realms, but there are some other special abilities that we'll find on the cards that we need to learn about. So let's go back to the table and see how they work. Anytime you play a card from your hand, there is no cost. For example, to play this Taxation, even though it cost me 1 gold to initially buy it from the market, once I have it, it will always be free for me to play from my hand. Unlike starting cards, items and actions from the market will have effects that are often divided into sections. The top section, known as the primary ability, happens as soon as the card is played. So when Taxation is played, we immediately gain 2 gold to our pool. Before moving on, we need to take note of these 4 ally symbols, which you'll find on every card within the market. If a card you played has a section showing one of these symbols on the left, it is known as an ally ability, and can be used as well as soon as you have another card in play with that symbol in its upper left-hand corner. For example, if I had played Word of Power, this has the matching ally symbol here, so this ability can be used now or at any point before the end of my main phase. In this case, the ally ability shows a new symbol we haven't seen yet that represents health you gain. So in this case, we could now add 6 health to our total. Your health can rise above your starting value of 50, so in this case we would slide the card down to here to show a health of 56. If your health would ever go over 79, flip this card over as a reminder that you now have 80 health, and then start counting over from 0, using both values as your total life. In this case, I would say I have 85. Going back to ally abilities, I should point out that as soon as you have 2 or more symbols from the same alliance in play, any of those matching ally abilities are now active. The symbol on Word of Power unlocked this ability, but Taxation is in play as well with its own symbol that unlocks the Word of Power's ability for 5 more health. If Rally the Troops was then played, its ally ability would be immediately available as well. If I had played this Elven Curse card instead, I don't have a matching ally card in play, so its ally ability remains unavailable, at least until I play another card with its matching symbol. Moving on, we now find here a new symbol. This is not an ally ability, but a sacrifice one. To gain its effect, you must remove the card from your deck entirely, placing it not in your personal discard pile, but in the space beside the market known as the sacrifice pile. You still gain any other abilities on that card that were available before you sacrificed it. In other words, when playing Word of Power, I'll get to draw 2 cards, and then use its ally ability, since Taxation was also in play, and then also gain 5 combat if I sacrifice it. The final type of card you might play from your hand are champions, which will be indicated here in its subtitle. Unlike other cards you use, these are not discarded at the end of your turn. When first put in front of you, a champion, like any other card, is placed upright. While in this position, the champion is said to be prepared. The symbol here represents an expend ability. This means you must rotate the card sideways to gain the listed benefit there. In this case, the Wolf Shaman would provide the player with 2 combat points, plus 1 more, for each other of their cards in play that's showing the green faction icon. An expend ability can't be used again while your champion is sideways because now it's no longer prepared. But remember, in your discard phase, you re-rotate all of your champions upright again. Each champion will also have a defense number in the lower right-hand corner found within a shield. When an opponent spends combat from their pool, they can choose to target a champion instead of the player. If the damage assigned to a champion equals its shield value, it becomes stunned. Stunned champions are sent to their owner's discard pile, meaning that although they are no longer on the table, and the player can no longer use that expend ability once each turn, they can still be drawn again later and played. That's why we say they're stunned and not dead. However, in order to stun a champion in this way, you must do all of the necessary damage in a single turn, because at the end of your turn, enemy champions fully heal. Damage does not carry over. So if this player was only able to generate 3 combat points on their turn, there's really no value in assigning it to the Wolf Shaman because it will not stun them. They'd be better off doing that damage directly to the player. Sometimes a card's ability will instruct you to directly stun a champion. In that case, you don't need to spend any combat to stun it. The targeted champion will simply go straight to that player's discard pile. Some champions, like Torgon here, are guards with a black shield and the word guard above it. When spending combat from your pool, if you want to deal damage to an opponent or any of their non-guard champions, you must first stun any guard champions they have in the prepared position. An expended guard champion can be ignored. In this case, the blue player here could use their combat points to target their opponent. Remember, if you cannot do enough damage to stun a champion within a single turn, it will not be removed from play. So while Torgon remains in the prepared position, he will continue to prevent damage to his player and any non-guard champions turn after turn until the opponent can generate at least 7 combat in their pool to assign to him, removing him from play. And that's everything you need to know to start playing. The game does come with enough cards for up to 4 players, and the game is played the same way with just a couple of small changes. First of all, during the setup, the first player would draw 3 cards, as before. The second player, though, draws 4 cards, and then the other players will start with 5 cards in hand. The game is played in clockwise order, and when you're spending your combat points, you can divide them up however you want between your opponents. When a player is eventually eliminated, they're removed from the game, and the other players continue to play until eventually only one is left, and that person is declared the winner. There are lots of other variants included in the rulebook of different ways you can play, including team play for up to 4 players, or if you have 2 copies of the game, team play amongst 6 players. But I'm going to leave those variants for you to discover on your own. Separately, you can also purchase character packs to add to the game. You'll use these in place of your starting deck, which will give you a unique character type to play as, like a wizard, fighter, thief, cleric, or ranger. Each will have a unique starting health, as well as special abilities that never begin in your deck, but stay out where you'll have access to use them as you see fit. Your starting deck will also be unique and have special items, actions, or champions already in it, tailored to that character's theme. Also available separately will be adventure decks to allow players to play a cooperative campaign, working together to defeat a great evil over the course of several sessions. Each player will have their own character that gains experience to spend to add new cards to their deck between the different sessions. All of these other ways to play the game I'll leave you to discover on your own. A lot of that information you can find over at the White Wizard Games website, which I'll put a link to in the description below. But if you have any questions about anything that you saw here, don't hesitate to put them in the comments below, and I'll gladly answer them as soon as I get a chance. But until the next episode, thanks for watching.